and not so good in the state of New Jersey. We're a library, educational facility, cultural center, educational center, archives. And we're 6 floors. We're open by appointment, and we hope that this will not be your first visit, but will be the first of many visits. It'll be your last visit, will be the first of many visits. Very special program tonight. I see a few good friends up here who I know always have wonderful and intriguing and challenging things to say. So I am looking forward to the program just as much as you are. Relax and enjoy it.
Thank you, Linda. And the only other housekeeping thing I would offer is those of you who would like to be on the mailing list or email list for the Newark History Society, if you can write your address and give it either to Warren Grover or to me, we'll be glad to add you to our list. We've been putting on programs now for the last 7 or 8 years with the intent of drawing more attention to the history of Newark and also to encourage the continuing study of different aspects of the history of Newark going back over the last 300 and nearly 50 years. We've been talking a long time, Becky, I think, about doing this program, about community organizing in Newark. Becky Doggett, who's one of our panelists tonight, is on the executive committee for the Newark History Society and usually is full of good ideas about how we can flesh out our programs. But for tonight, we just asked Becky to run with it because there's hardly anybody who knows more or knows more people involved in community organizing in Newark. You know, community organizing has been playing a critical role in this town for at least most of the last century, but particularly in the last 4 decades. It served the interests of the community organizations, have served the interests of everyday people. Sometimes when that was not the top priority of politicians in town, often on a block-by-block basis. But too often we've not stopped to hear the story or to put it in historical context, and that's the goal of our program tonight. We've asked Gerard Joab, the director of the Greater Newark, New Jersey City Local Initiatives Support Corporation, or LISC, to be our moderator. He's well known to all the community organizations in town because of the work that LISC does in the housing area and has done for some 30 years in this area. So, Gerard, I think you're going to introduce the program and the panelists and take it from there. There will be an opportunity to ask questions at the end.
Good evening. Good evening. Moderator, huh? If you know anything about organizers, moderator. All right, joke's on me. Right? These are wonderful people, and it's been my pleasure to work with them for many, many years. Before I start, I should mention that Council President Mildred Crump is in the audience, and we just want to say welcome. Certainly, Council President Crump has been part of all of the activities going on in community development here in Newark for many years, and we appreciate all that she has done. And not only her, but others have done to bring our city this far. You know, I felt compelled to talk a little bit. First of all, let me just say, we had a little organizing call on the telephone, and it was very thin on instructions, which gave me lots of leeway. And being an organizer myself, lots of leeway is good. But I thought it should put into a little perspective and set the context a little bit. And being, since we were at the Historical Society, I thought historical context by mentioning some of the things about New York might be appropriate. So we had dug up a few things before, and I pulled them out again to just go over them rather quickly. I think most of us know that Newark was settled in 1664. Captain Robert Treat was an agent sent by the towns of Guilford, Brantford, and Milford to settle in Newark. In 1666, the founding fathers of Newark purchased the land, and get this, all right, from the Hackensack Indian for gunpowder, lead, axes, coats, guns, swords, kettles, blankets, knives, 10 pairs of breeches, and 3 trooper hats, all valued at what? Remember it. $750. The early settlers created two major thoroughfares in Newark. Who knows where they are? Broad and Market, still there today. And it is a center, isn't it? It's been the center for years. Newark was named what? No. Milford. After the settlers came, after one of the towns from Connecticut, and then it was renamed Newark to name after who? To honor who? The pastor of Old First Presbyterian Church, Abraham Pearson, and he was ordained in Newark on the Trent in England. In I don't remember where. I don't have that in when. But that's how Newark gets its name. During the Revolutionary War, Washington Army retreated through Newark. And in 1776, the British occupied Newark for a little time. I think most of us know that. In 1789, the New Jersey legislature gave new charters to all the townships. And in 1806, Newark was divided into three districts. Remember who they are? Newark, Bloomfield, and Orange. So, Newark emerged in the turn of the century as a blue-collar town with skilled workers that filled the manufacturing plants and breweries. For many, prosperity was defined by weekly paychecks, a modest home, familiar neighborhoods, decent schools, reliable public transportation, and good health care, and a brand new hope for the future. Newark economic climb began in about 1940s and just went further south after that. Between 1940 and 1970, Newark population shifted from 89% white to almost 55% African American and Latinos. City residents and businesses received fewer mortgages and loans. The social and economic changes fueled racial animosity, which accelerated the movement of white families into the suburbs. Blockbusting became a popular practice. That is when white families would sell to a real estate agent. The agent will then increase the prices either on sales or rent, and rent to minority families at exorbitant rates. Neighborhoods deteriorated by public service, police protection, garbage collection, health care, education collapse. The city government, meanwhile, lacked the will or the expertise to solve these problems or even address them. Those were the conditions where community development organizations began working. 6 months after the civil disturbances in 1967, New Community Corporation was born. Within 4 years, equally strong CDCs such as La Casa de Pedro, Unified Labor Services Organization, International Youth Organization were also in business. These organizations followed United Community Corporation, who was created in 1964. List presence in Newark came around 1987, when I was about 3 years old. Just kidding. Where 19 corporations and banks provided a total of $450,000 in local funding, and national list matched that with about $350,000. And if you talk to Kathy McFarland and Bob Curtin, they'll have to tell you that they had to twist List's arm to come to Newark. But we did eventually. Since that time, LISC and our affiliate, the National Equity Fund, have brought more than $58 million to Newark, and that in turn has leveraged over $311 million in public and private sources. This backing of our local community development corporations have completed over 1,500 units of affordable housing, and there's another 400 or 500 or so in the pipeline. We are very, very grateful for our community development corporations, and a lot of what we'll discuss here and talk about here are built on the backs of these organizations. These organizations are built on the backs of other activists and organizers who stood in the fire lines and built Newark as we know it here, or rebuilt Newark as we know it today. We have two parts to our discussion tonight. The first is the historical context, and those participating in that, in the first panel, is Becky Doggett, Nancy Zach, and Richard Camerari. And I don't think Richard is here yet, right? Yeah. Not yet. I'm sure Ray Ocasio will step in for anyone who's missing. Did I tell you he used to be my boss at LISC? This is what we call payback.
Is that
You can send the check later.
Okay, all right, we'll do that. I was told that everybody the panelists will introduce themselves, so that those involved in the first panel will introduce themselves, and I'll be back to help with questioning.
Thanks, Gerard. Evening, everyone.
Evening.
Good to see you all through the rain and the cold. Yesterday was like a spring day, and I don't know what happened. My name is Becky Doggett, and I'm a founding member of Tri-City Citizens Union for Progress, which was officially incorporated back in 1968. I'm going to talk about that history. I no longer am on the staff or board of Tri-City. There are a couple of young folks here who are from Tri-City People's Corporation, and I'm sure they can bring us up to date on the exciting things that they're doing now. But what I wanted to focus on were the historical origins of Tri-City Citizens Union for Progress. And there were two main major events that were happening here in Newark that helped this organization emerge. And I'm sure all of you are wondering, what were the three cities? Well, the three cities eventually were Newark, Jersey City, and Patterson. We were very ambitious young people in those days. We were going to take on the whole world. But the two major events that were happening at the time, there was a national debate going on about community organizing around the country. Saul Alinsky was really doing an effective job in Chicago, and his movement was spreading across the country. And then there was also another debate going on about whether we in Newark should go the Saul Alinsky way of community organizing, or whether we should go towards more of the black self-development method that was eventually became the Black Power movement. The second issue that was very much broiling here in Newark at that time was the furor in the community about the displacement of people from the heart of the Central Ward being moved out of their homes to clear land for the building of the medical school. And if you remember at the beginning, Mayor Ocasio had promised 150 acres of land. So those two events were sort of swirling around in Newark in the late 60s. And it was really the Episcopal Diocese of Newark that brought together some people to talk about which form of community organizing should we engage in here in Newark. The Jersey City folks, Father Castle and some other people, were much more interested in the Saul Alinsky approach. However, one of the key executives of the Episcopal Diocese of Newark at that time was Dr. Nathan Wright. And Nathan Wright was more from the black self-empowerment movement. And so we had these very interesting debates and conversations back and forth about which way should we go. And at the same time, now this is early 1967, we're having these conversations, and because of Nathan Wright's prominence, he was able to convince the National Black Power Movement people to host the first Black Power Conference in Newark. And the date that was going to be set was July 1967. So you can imagine, this Black Power Conference was going to take place a week after the civil rebellions had started. And of course, everybody was trying to convince Nathan Wright and the others not to go ahead with having the Black Power Conference. But it did take place. And Dr. Wright continued to be very active on the national level. Those of us who were more local, however, started to think about, well, how are we going to operationalize this idea of self-empowerment? And we came up with the idea of the three-city approach. And each city was going to identify some major issues in their own town, Newark in its, Jersey City, and Patterson. Each of us were going to identify the issues that we wanted to tackle. And here in Newark, we began to really understand what was happening with the displacement of people in the Central Ward for the medical school. And so we in Newark decided that we should look at the whole issue of affordable housing. Affordable housing for the people who are being displaced, but also more importantly, trying to come up with a model of neighborhood preservation. We were naive then. We didn't understand what a national phenomenon was going on with the use of federal monies and under urban renewal for massive displacement of people. We thought we were the only ones with the problem. And so what we thought we could do is to develop a model for neighborhood preservation. So we started in the West Side Park area of Newark, and we said, well, if we could rehab these houses in like a 20 or 30 square block area and show the city that you can have affordable housing and not change the character of the neighborhood in doing it, that we don't have to wipe out whole communities and build brand new houses for people to have a good place to live. And so that was the whole concept of forming what became the Amity Village Housing Development Program, and also the Tri-City People's Corporation. And those two entities were really the first time in the state government, the financing by the Department of Community Affairs. This was even before the Housing Mortgage Finance Agency was in existence. This was the first time that the state was funding, not only funding housing rehab in the community of Newark, but also helping to underwrite the cost of having social services. We purchased a church building and put daycare and after-school programs in it. And it was unheard of with the housing people that they were supposed to do that as well as put up bricks and mortar. And we said, well, that's the problem with public housing. No one ever did that. And that housing needs to have community services, family support services, along with the bricks and mortar. And out of that came the whole idea of Tri-City People's Corporation. A few months later, a new community corporation was formed. A new community, of course, has become an excellent large-scale model of how those comprehensive services have to work together. So that was really what began that movement. It was sort of being caught in the furor and the excitement of what was going on nationally. But what we did was look at, well, how is this going to impact us on the local level? And what could we, as ordinary people on the local level do to make something happen for people in Newark? And just a sequel, unfortunately, the Jersey City chapter and the Patterson chapters got caught up in some of the local political controversies in their towns. And those two chapters never did get off the ground to any great extent. So it was really only the Newark sector of Tri-City that really flourished. Tri-City People's Corporation is still active today, has broadened the scope of the work that they do, and is still a very active, viable corporation here in the city of Newark. So we feel that we laid some excellent groundwork. And so the legacy goes on, and we hope that there'll be many more years of Tri-City People's Corporation. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky. And we're going to hold all the questions after the two panel presentations have been completed. And we're joined by Richard Camerari from New Community Corporation. I was going to ask him to speak next, and that would be really funny, wouldn't it? But instead we'll ask Nancy Zach, who was one of the founding members of the Ironbound Community Corporation.
That's actually not true. I'm not a founding member. In fact, Ironbound Community Corporation went through an entire decade before I arrived on the scene.
Nice.
And it's really great to be here to have this program happen. All this time, for 40 years, we've been known as troublemakers, but now since Obama says it's all right to do it. So we're okay now, we're okay. Ironbound also came out of the same historical period that Becky talked about earlier, the '67 period in Newark. And I am not going to go into that in great detail because I wasn't here, but what I do know, the information that I'm aware of is that there was a split in terms of the Students for Democratic Society folks who were in Newark at that time, and that a number of white organizers ended up going into and this would follow from the Black Power thing that you brought up, Becky, decided to go into the Ironbound, which was primarily a white neighborhood. And when they got into that neighborhood as organizers, they split. Some of them formed a youth project, which actually ran a high school, which became Independence High School. And that's where I came to teach in Newark. That's how I got to Newark, an alternative high school. And others began to meet. They had this vision of doing community organizing with the working class people. And they started a series of meeting at St. Stephen's Church, which, if you know Ironbound, is the church where the steeple on Ferry Street ends at that church. And it's a center of much organizing even today. So they began meeting with people in the community, and the thing that emerged as what people wanted to do was a daycare center. That was what the women, who were mostly single moms, many single moms on welfare, wanted to have a daycare center where their children could be safely and well taught while they were at work. There's a wonderful film called Janie's Jane, which was made about that time and is used in film schools all over the world, actually. My friend Bob ran into someone in Berlin who said, he said, "How do you know about America?" And they said, "Oh, we study films." And he thought they were going to say something like Butch Cassidy, and they said Janie's Jane. It's a wonderful movie that shows the origins of the daycare center. And one of the things that happened as the women got a sense that they could do things across racial lines. It was a group of multiracial women. That is why the windows got firebombed and different things happened to the Ironbound Community Corporation. Also, people were working on the Gibson campaign, which was not looked at very kindly. And so there were repercussions. There were firebombings and broken windows and such that took place. But that was all before I got here, so I had nothing to do with that, the firebombings. The community corporation, from the daycare center, the parents said, well, what do we need next? And they formed a K-8 elementary school, which became one of 2 model parent-run schools in Newark. Very interesting during the 70s. There was one on Springfield Avenue, and Ironbound community had an open classroom K-8 school run by parents. All of it was community-run, community-driven. The parents hired the teachers, the directors. Everything was run by the parents. They went to Trenton to get the money. They fought with the Newark School Board to try to keep the funding. And eventually, the fight with the school board, they lost at a certain point, and the school ended up being dropped. But that was a very major part of Ironbound Community Corporation in the 70s. In the late 70s, we were able to tap into a funding source called CETA, which was like a VISTA program, but for community-based. CETA, what did that stand for?
Concentrated Employment Training.
And so a number of new people were able to be hired under the CETA program. And the CETA program actually became a way that we were able to do a lot of community organizing. And Ironbound went on to have 2 or 3 more decades of very aggressive organizing, falling around 2 major themes. One was environmental organizing, because Ironbound was extremely polluted. It's the home of the world's largest dioxin discovery in 1983, and where the old diamond alphalite plant was. So a huge amount of organizing around cleaning up the neighborhood, just dealing with the threats to the community from the existence of toxic waste in the neighborhood, which is still a threat. It's still an ongoing threat that we have. And the people, and that's one whole thread. The other whole thread was housing organizing. Starting in 1977, we became involved with the Aspen River Park building in our neighborhood, and we have continued that up to the present. We are still involved with public housing and with private housing. And also in the late 70s, one of the most important things began to happen in community organizing, which was that the community organizations from across Newark joined forces through the Newark Coalition for Neighborhoods. And Richard, I guess, could speak more about that. That began in 1978. And it was the experience of many people who were doing organizing in the neighborhoods that when we joined forces across ward lines, people paid attention to us. And there were some very wonderful South Ward, East Ward collaborations around recreation with John L. Smith, who happened to be Mayor James's neighbor. There were, MCN was able to carry on a number of major citywide campaigns. I don't know, is that something you're going to talk about?
Later. I'm talking about new community.
Okay. And they were around things.
Becky was a founding board of incorporators.
So there were these cross-city organizing efforts which were able to actually accomplish more because people were and even into the 90s when we had Land for Learning, which was forcing the city to actually cite land for schools that were needed to be built, that were mandated to be built by the state of New Jersey, but the city of Newark was not holding land for them. Cross-city rallies on the steps of City Hall, people, children. I remember Al Fiala being surrounded by a group. Al Fiala was the city's development director for many years. How uncomfortable he looked, surrounded by a group of tiny children singing Christmas carols about "Give us land for schools." And what we found in all this organizing is that with information was power. All of the organizing that Ironbound has done, and I hope you'll take a look at the photographs, which are just the very tip of the iceberg in the back on the table. All of our organizing has had to be trilingual because we have Portuguese, Spanish, and English. So that made it even more of a formidable challenge. But we have found that when people have the information about how a situation directly impacts on them, they will take action and they will work together. We have seen 1,000 people at Essex County College, people who could barely speak English, with the DEP talking about, no, we have dioxin in our neighborhood. We do not need a garbage incinerator which will produce more dioxin in our neighborhood. Why are you doing this to us? And people, Portuguese women in their black babushkas and outfits, traditionally dressed, standing in front of heavy construction equipment. They were much braver than I was, trying to block that incinerator. And indeed, 3 incinerators were blocked. 1 got built. Across the state of New Jersey, they had 14 incinerators supposedly to be built. Only 4 got built because of the popular opposition and community organizing. We do win. The wins are wonderful. Also, what's wonderful is the changes in people as you go through a community organizing process. The way that it changes their lives. You look at the women who started that daycare center, you talk to them, and they will tell you that their lives were forever changed by the sense of power they got from what happened to them. I will stop because I could talk for the entire night. And I love talking about this, and I will be happy to talk to people after, I guess, or in discussion.
Richard? Thank you, Gerard.
Some people see Nancy talking so much.
And we have a self-introduction policy. So.
Self-instruction. Hello, everyone. My name is Richard Camerari. I work for New Community Corporation, lifelong resident of Newark, and all that stuff. So I'm here to talk a little bit about New Community, I guess. I've been with New Community since 1998, which is pretty amazing, 10 years plus. I was not at New Community's founding in 1967. I wasn't too far away. I was a callow youth of 16 at the time, living on Bruce Street between Cabinet and 12th Avenue. I like to tell people when I grew up there, it was probably, I was born in 1951, maybe about 75% white working class people, the rest African American. And by the time went on, it became 99.9% African American. But at the very end, it was 100% white because my family was the last family on the block. The block hadn't been taken over by the medical school. And irony is the block was never built by the medical school. It stayed vacant for years and years until, I guess, PCCI or CAC finally built some rental housing there about 10 years ago or so. Anyway, New Community was founded in 60, it was actually incorporated in 1968, so I was celebrating its 40th anniversary last year. Monsignor William Linder was not the end-all and be-all of New Community's founding. Don't tell him I said that. We're being taped, so it's too late. The genesis of New Community was actually in the parish of the Queen of Angels, from everything I've spoken and read. Queen of Angels is a very special history in Newark in terms of Roman Catholic religion. Many of you might know there aren't too many African Americans who are Roman Catholic, but Queen of Angels was a parish that was specifically created in the 1920s to accommodate black parishioners. As they say, Sunday morning is usually the most segregated time, even within religions. Interesting enough, my family, we grew up near St. Joseph Parish, which at the time had similar kind of ethnic segregation because one of my aunts, the younger one, was not able to get her sacraments at St. Joseph Parish. Being Italian, she had to go to St. Rocco's, which is on Huntington Street. But Queen of Angels was a parish that Father Linder got to in the early 60s. I think there was one black priest, and I know that people here can correct me, but it was the genesis of organizing through a number of, it tapped into a couple of things. One was kind of the beginnings of liberation theology within Catholic theology, which obviously became much more popular and took hold in Latin America, particularly Central America. But also the Civil Rights Movement. There was a lot of ferment, obviously, at the time throughout the 60s in Newark. The black parishioners at Queen of Angels were quite active. You had people like Joe Chaneyfield, Willie Wright, who were key in terms of the creation of New Community. I do believe that, I think Ken Gibson was also on the first board of that. Someone told me that once. But so it had a strong roots in the community, people who were strongly involved both in the labor movement and civil rights. And when the rebellion happened in 67, obviously that coalesced a lot of things. From New Community's point of view, the people who were there seemed to focus primarily on gathering people together and to organize them with a variety of meetings, surveys, that kind of thing, to see what were the main issues. And the main issues, not surprisingly enough, you have the big five usually with any urban issues, with any issues at all, is housing, healthcare, education, employment, crime, safety. What turned out to be the most pressing needs, based upon community input, people who showed up, was housing and childcare. Thus, Babyland was one of the things that spun off from the community, was created at that time. Babyland was separated corporately from the community about 7 or 8 years ago. And housing, New Community, the model it used for housing in terms of getting started was funding in terms of both government funding and obviously being in the late 60s, early 70s was a good time to be around looking for government funding. There was a lot of funding around, it's given the trajectory of our history in this country, not much happens without some level of confrontation and unfortunately violence. Given the rebellions throughout the country in the 60s, the feds came up with dope to try to tamp things down. Not dissimilar to what happened in the early 90s with the whole Rodney King issue. We had Los Angeles blowing up in 90 or 91, And all of a sudden we have enterprise zones and all these millions of dollars available. So that's another lecture. But new community pulled people together, residents, and it was pretty much the usual community organizing model, having meetings, discussing what the issues were, and creating a board which was comprised of people from the community. I don't know all the names, but again, people like Joe Cheney, Bill Willie Wright were on this board. The funding included not just government funding, but some interesting wrinkles in terms of private funds. But one of the things I know Monsignor Linder always talks about is that, I forget what company it was, but they came to offer a grant, and they said, no, we don't want a grant, we want a loan, which is one of the things the community started to do, is to get loans instead of grants to build up a sort of a credit history. It also captured a model that it borrowed from funding in terms of Israel, where the Israelis would sell trees or something like that. They would raise funds for the trees in Israel. So what the community did was sold bricks. Brick City, right? This is before Brick City became popular. They would sell symbolic bricks in the Central Ward to suburban, and mainly through parishes out in the suburbs, to gain money. It took a while. People don't realize that New Community was incorporated in '68, and its first housing was not built until 1975. That was Holmes Court, which actually some of you may have read about recently, which is coming down. It is being closed and demolished, and that's a whole other lecture too. So, but the first housing was built in '75, and then fairly quickly, within about 7 or 8 years, most of the rest of New Community's housing in the Central Ward and West Ward was developed and constructed. We have, I guess, about 2,000 units roughly of housing that's affordable, nice rental housing, affordable for low and moderate income affordability. I don't use the word affordable housing anymore because that means nothing. It's affordable for who, so you really have to be specific. And then in succession, New Community moved into various other service areas. Healthcare is probably its largest area right now with its extended care program, the nursing home on South Orange Avenue, Family Services, Visiting Nurse Association, workforce development, for-profit spin-offs that it created, the Pathmark in 1990, the Priory restaurant in '84. The Priory is also closed now. Don't go to the Priory for lunch because you won't get any food. Until further notice, it is closed. Although it's still open on Friday nights. So get a little marketing going in here too. So in the beginning, in terms of organizing, New Community was your basic model of getting people together to respond to a very particular need. And at the time, and in the '60s, it was, I say this all to people always ask me, my full introduction to organizing happened when I graduated at Rutgers Newark in '73. I began working with the Quest Services program, which also spun out of Queen of Angels, ironically enough. But then my full baptism in fire was when I began working with the Newark Coalition for Neighborhoods in 1980. As I mentioned, Becky was one of the incorporators of that organization, which is a citywide coalition of groups like Casa, Unified Vailsburg, Ironbound, Tri-City, etc. I would also mention, in terms of history of some of these groups, there is a pretty interesting dissertation by a woman named Julia Rabig, where she concentrates on 3 organizations. One is New Community, one is Tri-City, and one is Coweta Towers, in terms of the ACA's work, which is a little later, as in sort of early 70s, but it has some interesting information there with interviews too. New Community became, I guess a model to some degree of creating something large, and at the time very effective. Over the years, obviously it grew, and it had issues. One of the key things with any organization like New Community in terms of organizing is that when you build a lot of housing, and you decide there's a key decision you have to make, is do you manage it yourself, or do you hire a management firm? If you manage it yourself, you can control the jobs and all that stuff. Of course, then you're a landlord. Being subject to all the pressures and dissatisfaction landlords are subject to if they don't do everything you should do in a timely fashion for your tenants. When I first got to New Community in '98, the issue of resident organizing was one of the things that was mentioned to me. Because when I started speaking with residents, I said to them, time I'll just leave it with that. One of the problems with managing your own housing is that you then become a landlord, and that makes it a little difficult.
It's an organizing tool. So.
Yes. So with that, I'll sit down and we'll...
You would need to come and then...
You know, when we walked in and people were still gathering, Becky looked at the watch and she said, you know, we could start early. And I know why she said that. You got 5 organizers in here. All right. You know, we're going to, so we can get through this before 8 o'clock, we're going to ask the second question, which is, what are you doing today to address the economic issues in this recession? And the two, Mike Farley, who is the Executive Director of Unified Vailsburg Services Organization, and Ray Ocasio, the Executive Director of La Casa de Pedro, will speak on those that question. All right, Mike first.
Thanks, Gerard. By way of introduction, I came to Newark in 1971 as a volunteer to help start a school. And I lived in a convent that summer with Rich Camerari. The convent's no longer there, but we are.
There were a few other people.
Endurance is a premium quality in community organizing and community organizations. I also want to begin by thanking Becky Doggett, who is one of my role models and one of the early leaders in community organizing and community development in Newark, and who, with others, inspired me to take this direction in my life and work. A lot of us can say that about Becky. Denise Cook of the Newark History Society is my boss, the president of the UVSO Board of Directors. What are we doing to address economic issues in the recession? The most obvious effect right now in Vailsburg is in housing. In a list from early 2009, there are 100 bank-owned properties in Vailsburg. That doesn't include the houses that are owned by the city of Newark or that are in process of foreclosure. Our strategy is to acquire and resell these houses, or to acquire and manage the houses, if that's the more realistic approach. It's really house by house, owner by owner, and neighborhood scale is key. Only 2 of over 100 buyers of UVSO houses have gone into foreclosure, and I think this is because of the agency's slow, deliberate, and personal approach, an approach that will continue. Both in partnership with Hands of Orange, Housing and Neighborhood Development Services, and La Casa and others, and in solo efforts, our work in the foreseeable future will be to get vacant houses back into active use as quickly as possible. We're in a good position for this, in part because we began to acquire and manage real estate instead of selling everything we developed about 5 years ago. I really believe that taking on the management of additional real estate is going to be a big part of our role in reversing the overall effects of foreclosures and the recession. In the bigger picture, a recovery committee made up of UVSO board members and staff has been meeting since January to try to understand the local impact of the recession and to figure out what UVSO can do. A big part of the discussion has been about housing and real estate, but there is also concern about increasing concrete needs like jobs and food and sustenance, and about the potential for more crime with more unemployment. Ideas that are in consideration include housing-related jobs, volunteer opportunities linked to expanding needs, a rental office, and more food resources like pantries and regular meals. Openness and willingness to help everyone seeking help in some way is the goal, and that's the committee's theme as we try to figure out what to do and how to pay for it. The critical factor in this is the existing 5-year plan developed in the neighborhood, in the Vailsburg neighborhood. Many of the problems and issues that are prevalent today are addressed in the plan, and we will continue to make local progress if we follow the plan. Everything in it was included with community input, and everything in it was structured as an achievable or shovel-ready project, if you will. Many plans have already reached actualization, like the development of a new 26,000 square foot preschool in the Ivy Hill section of Vailsburg. a free Avid preschool in an area without a single preschool and an overflow of little kids. This is an important resource for families and important to the stabilization of the ideal area and the 2,100 unit ideal apartments, the largest private complex in New Jersey. Another realized priority has been the expansion of programs for Vailsburg teenagers and the creation of a teen center in the community. The teen center dovetails with the development of a charter high school application and our hope to return a high school to the Vailsburg community. This can be another important avenue for job creation in the recession and important to more and more kids gaining the skills they need to attain and work and contribute in the future. Good schools of all kinds are obvious and critical building blocks to a healthy community. And this segues into the answers to the other questions that are part of the discussion, so I won't go into that. But I think the point that I'd like to make and to emphasize is that from community organizing come community activities, and that in UBSO and in Vailsburg, we don't do anything without consensus, without public discussion, without taking broad and wide input about what's important and what the organization ought to do. The board of directors is made up entirely of Vailsburg stakeholders who live or work or otherwise have a commitment in the community. I listen to them. My job's easy because as long as it's for Vailsburg, if it helps Vailsburg, then we're going to do it with consensus from the local community.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Ocasio, Executive Director of Ocasio, Pedro, and while they were over in the convent, I was in the hills of Columbia being an organizer, so not Columbia University, but the country. But there is a great deal of context in terms of what we're talking about in terms of organizing, and clearly much of what we do as organizers comes from the labor movement and the civil rights movement. But the uprising and the rioting that we saw in the 60s really led to a change at that time that led to what is the model cities and a whole series of programs that were designed to deal with some of the pressures that we're building in urban America at the time. And I think, as you've heard, there were models organizations that came out of that. New Communities, Bed-Stuy, Casa, Ironbound, Unified Vailsburg. And many of us were premised on the concept that we were mission-driven to essentially serve our communities, to give voice to the voiceless, to provide self-sufficiency, and to, in some cases, revitalize our communities in a variety of ways. Those were humble beginnings because essentially this was all, in many respects, it was virgin territory that we were moving into. If you would think back, that first housing project that any of us might have done would have been something that we would have called sponsorship, where we were lending our name, not actually building it. But today we're actually talking about building it. When we talk about lending, organizing people, what we were really trying to do was find a common enemy and gravitate people around things, not towards our goal or mission, but basically in reaction to something. Ocasio's mission is, in fact, to foster self-sufficiency, to provide empowerment, and also neighborhood revitalization. And those were the founding, in large part, except for the revitalization, the original missions of our organization. And many of the things that we talked about then, are things we're talking about today, as Ricky pointed out: housing, health, education, employment, revitalization are all part of what we are all doing today. So that conceptually what we did then and what we're doing today is basically the same in terms of the area that we work, although we're somewhat different. I think we're all today much more established organizations. I think we were a lot, I want to say, loose back then. If you had 3 people, you had an organization. And so we're much more structured in ways that we probably did not comprehend. But I think the missions have remained the same. I think it's the institutions that has changed. I also want to say that what has changed is also the concept of neighborhood. The idea of sort of the block that you grew up on and the environment that you have there isn't what people today call neighborhood. Neighborhood is defined by many people in many different ways. The church that you go to, where you do your shopping, where you don't do your shopping. The school that you go to, which may be a neighborhood school, or the non-neighborhood schools that you go to. So the concept of neighborhood and getting people to come together may in fact be more difficult today than it was then. But yet all of us are still engaged in the process of organizing in some shape or form, providing voice to those who are voiceless, and to empower those who have not been. I'd also want to say that in today's environment, we have in the city administration that is about civic engagement in ways that we have not seen before, in the sense that they are encouraging new forms of people participation in government, whether it's through super neighborhoods or whether it's any variety of things. And this is a new tone, I think, to the city. And it has to come to terms with those of us who are in front of organizations that were established 20, 30, 40 years ago, because there has to be a linkage of that. One of the things that we have in Newark today is the fact that we probably have more nonprofits than we can afford to maintain. And so the issue is going to become, how are we going to sustain all these efforts? That's the conceptual side. Let me go to what I was asked to talk about. What are we doing in terms of helping people in today's economic terms? One of the most immediate things that we are doing, as I said earlier, because we are much more institutionalized than we were 40 years ago, there's a program called Low-Income Energy Assistance Program. Last year, as the energy bill soared, we had an increase of 22%. We serviced 43,000 actions in terms of providing people services, whether it was with low-income energy assistance, universal services, share, comfort partners, or our weatherization program. This year, when there's been a change before all of the stimulus discussion, there was a change in the regulations that raised the income, raised the dollar amount that families can get. And so we expect that this year we will probably surpass 60,000 people who walk through the Casa's doors to get one of those benefits that I just mentioned. At the same time, and so we're gearing up for that. As of now, La Casa is building a new facility that we are taking a room that is about, I would say, 1/3 the size of this in our basement, and we're going to put in a new building. We're building a $9.4 million project. We're going to create 122 capacity spaces for sitting, or the population comes, so we get about 150 people come a day. And we'll also have an indoor play space. So we're responding to that. We're at the moment, right now, we're going to have a tent for next September, so that the overflow will be not in our building, but will be in the tent until we can finish the building, because the building's going to take more than 12 months to do. The other thing that we're engaged in is weatherization. This is, again, pre-stimulus in terms of the greening of this country. The thought has been that weatherization is a way of conserving energy and reducing our oil bills, etc. So in about October, when the federal budget was passed, the weatherization actually received about 100% increase in funding. So last year, when Casa did about $1.5 million of weatherization, we did 350 units throughout Essex County. This year, we're going to be doing some 600, and under the stimulus bill, we expect another $2.5 million. So we probably will be doing a 200% increase and looking to do about 1,000 units a year in terms of weatherization. This is everything from putting in new windows, installation in walls, replacing the boiler, repairing it, hot water heaters, etc. So that is going to be a major comfort, I think, to many families by providing one, heat, conserving energy, two, and reducing their energy costs. The live heat program, by the way, is something that people have figured into. It's like the welfare check, because you get this applied for it. And so it is something that low-income families figure into their budget and decide, well, I'm not going to pay PSE&G, I'm going to go pay the doctor, I'm going to buy the shoes and the groceries. So it is part of our subsidy program, except that it has a different course of how people get there. I won't talk too much about neighborhood stabilization, but foreclosure is hitting our neighborhood as it's hitting all of our neighborhoods. And just like Mike has suggested, we too are involved, but not only in the HANDS project, but also in the state and the city neighborhood stabilization program. We expect $2 to $3 million to come in that window, where in the first shot we hope to either renovate or build some 20 parcels in our target planned area Lower Broadway area, but that's only a very small segment of the overall need that's building there. The other two programs I want to really quickly point out is, one is we have been doing, in the 1970s, what Casa, when it was created, helped families get on welfare. In 1999, as I walked in the door, there was something called Workforce Initiatives. We, at that point, started helping families get off of welfare. Those numbers have been greatly reduced. The numbers that are currently available in terms of people who are looking for work are very different than they were 10 years ago. Today, it is much more single men and women, people who have health issues or addictions, etc. And there's a new population that we can add to that, as this mayor has focused on a great deal, is the prison reentry. So these are the people who are now coming into our programs and are looking for job readiness, job placement. Some of this is basic GED work. Some of it is case management. Some of it is coaching. Some of it is mentoring. Some of it is actually finding jobs. Last year, for the last few years, we've been placing about 400 people a year. But those were, for the most part, women who had been in the workforce, left the workforce, and were willing to enter low-paying jobs in various fields. The challenge we have before us now is somewhat different. We have two threats, what I just basically said. That is to say, public assistance, which is generally males, females who have health issues, etc. Prisoner reentry. And with the recession, we're finding now that there's an increasing number of people who are coming to us who are unemployed or are in low-paying jobs that they can't manage given the economy. And so they are looking for jobs, new job opportunities or job advancement. And we see this as one of the areas that we are hoping to get into so that it will not be dependent upon those who are destitute or in hard straits and looking to get out of that hole, but people who are halfway up that ladder as well, trying to move up. So we think that those are the areas that we engage in. This all goes back to what we said earlier. If you can provide people with self-sufficiency, where they can get beyond their day-to-day problems, food, housing, rent, etc., then you can talk about empowerment. Then they'll have the ability to step outside of their self and family and look towards their community and begin to solve some of those issues. Part of those issues is going to be to have a quality environment so that when they have that awakening, that they have a voice, that they have an opportunity to speak up and to be engaged in their community, that in fact they will stay in our community and that the community they have will have quality. So let me leave it there.
We have roughly about 45 minutes for formal questioning, and then you can have them all to yourself when you break up. But, I wanted to start where Ray left off and just ask one question. I think the challenge as a funder that I see is the request from our community development partners for more and more for organizers. Funders are not funding organizers. And I'll start out with that question. We have gone to recognized service delivery. Is the need for organizer out there? How are you coping by not having organizers? How many organizers do you have on your staff? Is that sufficient? What do you see that is missing or lacking by not having the folks that is there, Richard?
I think there's a number of questions that need to be addressed here, and some of them can be quite uncomfortable. If you look at the socioeconomics between 1970 and today, they're not all that much different in Newark. When it comes to organizing is one of those things that, like affordability or racism, that can mean anything to anybody, which basically means they signify nothing. My biggest frustration, for instance, is funders when it comes to organizing. They always say they want to fund organizers, but when you really want to organize, which means you're going to have to challenge people, particularly the powers that be, I found funders to become quite timid. I speak of the Newark Coalition for Neighborhoods, for instance, which is basically defunded because I guess we started getting too noisy in the 80s. This is all my opinion, ladies and gentlemen. So but there are issues like that, which I think many of our major organizations that began in the 60s and 70s became so institutionalized, they became profoundly vulnerable to all kinds of funding pressures, whether it was from private funders or from the city. Looking out for their CDBG funds and could no longer really stick their necks out. Some of them, Unified Vailsburg, for instance, were very smart. They created their own beards, really. Vailsburg Block Association Council organizations that would organize for them. So they wouldn't be, this is all my opinion, Mike, so I don't want to put you on the spot, they wouldn't be as vulnerable to the kind of pressures we needed. And it's particularly important in Newark because Newark is so damn small. We were always vulnerable. Everybody knows what you're doing in Newark. And the people you would want to organize, for instance, working class people, they either work for City Hall, they work for the Housing Authority, they work for the Board of Ed, and they were very vulnerable to all kinds of pressure, losing their jobs, their friends or family members losing their jobs. So, I sometimes wonder when people say they want to support organizing, do they really want to support organizing? Because I look at just the arena, for instance, back a few years ago, and there was a small group of people, and I got to say this about Nancy, we really should honor people in a more timely fashion. Nobody I know has worked harder or more consistently than Nancy Zach on organizing in Newark, at least the way I define it. And we should honor people like before they're dead. So I want to take the opportunity to thank Nancy. But I'm thinking like the arena, there's a group called SCORE that really tried to fight the arena and just at least expose and clarify what was going on there, when almost none of the organizations in Newark really questioned it. Again, it was a very dangerous time. We had the contradictions are blurred with the with the advent of black political leadership in Newark in '70. Suddenly we entered this whole neo-colonial type of dynamic where, well, they're not white anymore, so maybe they're with us. And but that wasn't exactly always the case. So anyway.
Nancy, would you care to comment on the current state of organizing and funding of organizers?
You can't really do, you can do organizing without having organizers, but it's harder. And it's always been hard to fund organizing, always. For example, we just lost one of our senior housing organizers. Why? Because of the economic downturn. Suddenly, away was from a bank. So he was no longer working with us. But then, the other side of it is we got the young guy who came on, and we got money from Victoria Foundation to hire the young guy. The young guy wants to be, what does he want to be? A community organizer. So I think...
and then president.
and
then president.
Yeah. So he's a Newark kid who grew up in Ironbound and is bilingual and went to Vailsburg. So, you have, I think there's a real interest in community organizing. Obviously, it takes resources. It does take people. And never been enough support for it as far as I'm concerned.
I think we are challenged because the resources are not there necessarily. It is something people talk about but don't want to fund. On the other hand, as we become more institutionalized, there are a number of opportunities within our organizational structure that we can, in fact, embed in their work, organizing work, so that in an early childhood you can have a parent association mechanism where you empower people, where you can provide leadership. You also do that in your youth leadership program, simply because you have 20, 30, 40 kids who are coming to you every evening, and leadership becomes part of that. You see that in the mayor's program with youth also. He has a program that deals with that. So that there are a number of ways that you can take existing staff and instill in them the concept of community building. As I said, the concept of a neighborhood has changed. And so that kind of the grouping of people, whether it's on a block association, whether it's a tenant, which have been traditional models, or whether it's through the service delivery system, through early childhood programs, youth programs, even we have a class for GED of immigrants. We took them to Jersey City when the governor made his announcement of the Blue Ribbon immigration proposal. So there are opportunities to instill and encourage people to begin to think about their stake in their community as they define it. And so I think those are the challenges that we have to take on.
Mike, final comment?
I think there's, in Vailsburg, the predominant method of community organizing has been through block clubs. Rich mentioned the Vailsburg Block Association Council. There's a genius in community organizing through the block club network that I think is critical to the survival of the Vailsburg neighborhood. UBSO was an ecumenical coalition when it was formed in 1972. Over time, the congregations, which were the mainstays of the organization, and the representatives on the board of directors either consolidated or folded up their tents or changed in dramatic ways. And the leadership that emerged was from the Block Club network. There are now block clubs, the Ideal Neighborhood Association, Vailsburg Block Association Council, which have become 501c3s, which are organizations in their own right. UVSO had a hand in that formation and development through the community organizing program. But the independence of those organizations is the best and I think the most complete outcome of the organizing process. So it's not static. I think that we're evaluating now what community organizing means going into the future. And certainly it is the strength and the heart of the Vailsburg community. Ideal Neighborhood Association, the Neighborhood Square Block Association, Vailsburg Block Association Council. These are coalitions of individuals and volunteers who meet of their own and on their own with a focus on a better community.
Let me just ask folks if they have questions because time is fleeting. I'm sorry, Ray. And if you can identify yourself for all of us in the room before you ask a question, that'd be great.
Just a quick question on behalf of my class. I'm Rob Russo. The class is Public and Nonprofit Productivity at Rutgers, Georgia. I have many of my students here. I know they're all tired, so at this time we wrap up. But the one question I wanted to ask is the services you provide, funding you've talked about. When you provide services, after you've organized and got an organization together like Ironbound Community Corporation, how do you provide the services really effectively, efficiently, and productively? Our students are studying how to make it productive in nonprofit terms. Forget business, it's nonprofits. How do we keep a productive service delivery with so little funding? Funding being difficult to get with the political pressures of funding.
Ray, you care to start?
What I always say is that we're probably more effective and more efficient than the for-profit because we don't have profit. We can't pass on our cost to the consumer. So there's number one. Number two, I think the answer really is there are two basic elements that nonprofits bring to the equation. One is our link to the community. In terms of whatever we did, whether it was to organize them or the services we provide, gives us, I think, an entree to that community. I think the other side of it is the quality of the services that we provide. If we provide a quality product, then people will return to us. And I think that's one of the advantages of multi-purpose organization. I think if you're only dealing in one aspect, if I'm only providing emergency housing situation, I'm as good as that emergency for you. And so there's no relationship. But to the extent that there's a multi-purpose organization and you can combine a variety of programs, you have efficiencies. There are all kinds of efficiencies that we're trying to achieve, I think. And again, I think with the little resources we do, I think we probably generate a whole lot given the resources that are put on the table. But even with that, I know we try to strive to achieve efficiencies, if nothing else, simply because of the volume that we're dealing with at some point.
Becky?
Yeah, other comment I would make on that question of efficiency is I think the most effective way that nonprofits can work is also working in partnership with the public sector. I think when local and state governments use the nonprofit community to deliver services, they really are making the best use of our public dollars. Because one, it establishes a public policy that says going into communities, going into neighborhoods is very important, and we want the people who know the people best to deliver the services. So the models that I've seen that have worked best have been ones where city government or state government has delegated the responsibility of delivering services to a local organization. It has the language, has the culture, has more of the time and the personal interest in that community and those families. And so I think we should, as advocates, we should encourage more and more of those kinds of joint efforts to take place. The fact that the city of Newark right now is very positive about civic engagement is a very important area. So I think going forward, what we're going to see is that, what we hope to see, and it's really great to see so many young people here, and now that our president, has really put a nice gloss on community organizing, now might be a good time for us to really try to do more to have community organizing as a course of study in our colleges, so that young people can see that this could be a career that they could go into and really make a difference going forward. The way of that we used to be able to do community organizing, sort of passing it on one to the other, may not be the best way to do it these days. We may have to become more systematic about how we bring people into the community organizing field and get them ready to become leaders in running nonprofits and community organizing.
I would assume that you can teach it, but we get that done.
Sure, glad to.
And Mike, as an executive director, how much emphasis do you now place on collaboration with other entities in your community to achieve some of the balances that we're talking about here?
Well, collaboration, cooperation, consensus building are essential aspects of our work in the Vailsburg neighborhood. As I noted in my comments, Gerard, we don't do anything without building neighborhood consensus around a particular project or idea. And in that respect, it's critical. In terms of collaborating
Around services.
It depends. It's a question of whether there's mutual interest for a mutual good end. The collaboration that I think is most useful is with the local public schools at this moment. We are operating after-school programs in 4 Vailsburg public schools. There are hard resources on the table. The schools provide the space, the lunch. Many of the staff are teachers during the regular day. We provide the program, the curriculum, and the balance of staffing. So that's true collaboration, and we accomplish an outcome or a result that neither could independently or neither could at the same level or with the same quality. So I think when there is mutual interest and a greater interest that's the greater good, that we'll definitely pursue collaborations. But I think I'd say too, the collaboration is a popular buzzword. And we've been bludgeoned with collaboration for 10 or 12 years. And sometimes it's meaningless. If you have to develop an application that includes a component having to do with collaboration, it doesn't make any sense.
Next question, sir?
My name is Lou Riley. I was just wondering, how do you evaluate your individual performance, being organizers, et cetera? Is there any thing that can evaluate personally? Because I know it's a very nebulous thing, but how do you individually evaluate your performance?
Again,
Anyone.
and how important is that in this environment?
Yeah.
I think there are 2 or 3 or more measures. We use outcome measures where there are not built-in evaluation components. Many of our programs are accredited. For example, the preschool centers are accredited by the National Association for the Education of Young Children. We have a standard to meet. We have periodic external evaluations. We have an internal report that has to be prepared. So that that's maintaining accreditation is one way that we set and keep a standard. Where that doesn't exist, then we'll develop outcome measures that we use to indicate progress. But there are fewer and fewer instances where external measures do not come with funding for the program.
Nancy, do you care to comment on methodology evaluation?
I wouldn't have anything to say.
I'm trying to deal with the question in terms of, are you asking how we as an organization, or me as an individual?
Nobody else can stand and do what you do and evaluate you. You have such a unique organizational structure, what you're trying to get involved in as far as people. So how do you evaluate your performance?
My performance as the executive director.
Yeah.
Well, I wish.
Don't sit there and say how great you are.
I wish I was still, sitting underneath that tree in the hills of Columbia, because it would be a lot easier to figure out how I'm doing. No, I clearly there are requirements that we have to meet, as Mike just suggested. The other one is really how many complaints come to your door, and how many people come back for the services. I think that's as good a measurement. The other one that I use is if I needed to call people for land for schools or any issue, can we generate that population? Are we connected with enough people to amass a group of people to go and do something? The other one is how many people are off doing their own thing where we don't have to take the lead. And that's a hard one to measure because, you know, how much credit can you put on that one? But I dare say that at least Mike and myself, as executive directors, have less and less of the contact that, you know, it takes to really be close and be able to measure the ability. I mean, now we're working through you know, our stats and things like that.
I think we're in an interesting time right now where the
You have to identify yourself.
Oh, sorry. My name is Rosie Viola, and I'm a second-year PhD student at Rutgers Newark in the American Studies program. And I was wondering, right now we're in an interesting time where we elected our first community organizing president, and at the same time our economy is really struggling, and so grants and endowments and the credit freeze is really taking some of the funding away from a lot of the resources that are needed and required. And I was wondering, what are some of the tools that community organizations can use in order to share resources and to collaborate on some of the major issues that residents face, whether it's housing or education or just after-school program for children, medical care, things of that nature.
Well, I think there's and one of the main tools is just communication. We've been fortunate in Newark where we have had, I mentioned the Newark Coalition for Neighborhoods before, but that sort of morphed about 15 years ago into what's now the Newark Community Development Network, which includes just about all the major CDCs in town, you know, Casa, Unified, Ironbound, and the groups talk. And there is no, I think they have pretty open dialogue about things and ways they can collaborate and issues that are on the table. So that's key, I think, that kind of information sharing. It's also, you know, it's in a town like Newark that is so small, it should be easy to do that. It wasn't always easy, but I think the groups really, from what I've seen, everyone is pretty open with each other. And if they don't want to work together, they don't. And if they do, they do. And as Mike said, it's pretty much a pragmatic decision. You know, if this is going to help my people in the neighborhood, and I don't want to say it's all cut and dried. You know, like if it's just good for Vailsburg, I want to do it because I'm going to Unified Vailsburg has been involved with citywide efforts, whether it becomes, and you know, the Master Plan Working Group is a spin-off of NCDN. We've been doing this for 10 years. People from all over the city, every part of the city, organizing to ensure that the city has a new master plan. Now we finally have a master plan re-exam report, which is a lot closer to it after 10 years, and all the groups are involved with that. I mean, they've created their own neighborhood plans. Everyone up here, except me, these organizations all created a bona fide neighborhood-based planning procedures and a plan. So those are the kind of things that I think have shown a great deal of you know, insight and productivity on the part of our CDCs here in Newark.
If I can.
Yeah, I was going to ask, you alluded to it in your comments about the number of organizations as well. I'll give you a comment on that.
Well, I was going to answer the question directly, I think. I think we all have...
As opposed to me.
I love you anyway. I think we all have core programs, and even though we're talking about budget cuts, I would say not even 10% of everybody's budget who's on this stage right now comes from the City of Newark. So the City of Newark is not a major funder of community-based organizations, at least the institutions you see here. Most of the money is coming either from the state and federal government and or private foundations. Most of those core programs, yes, are being cut. They're being cut 10%. On the other hand, there are some staples. And as we said earlier, in terms of the efficiencies, we are, in fact, cheaper than government when it comes to doing any number of things. We can provide early childhood cheaper than the Board of Ed can do it. So there's a core element there. The other thing is that the crisis that we're facing has created new opportunities. The fact that we're chasing neighborhood stabilization to deal with foreclosure and the ability to be flexible and to respond to that situation. You know, when I said last year we dealt with a 22% increase in LIHEAP customers, we did that with $100,000 less than we had in the previous year. and now they gave me $100,000 that I didn't have last year, and I expect, another increase. So we can do it, I think, more efficiently, but we have a core program that's even at 10% cuts. I think we can manage. I think those of us who are more stable than other organizations, if you're working on a $300,000 budget, the 10% cut is going to hurt you. But if you're working on 6 or 8, it's a different formula. So core programs and also taking the flexibility to respond to changing environments and dealing and absorbing those programs, whether it was as 10 years ago were first initiatives or today in terms of neighborhood stabilization.
Well, the other thing I would say is that over time you begin to develop people who, whether the money's there or not, whether the organizer's there or not, they're going to be doing stuff. Tonight there's a meeting of the HUD Tenants Coalition. Who is that? That's women who live in these large housing complexes, mostly women, who nobody's paying them. They're there because they have gone through some organizing experience earlier with organizers we might have had when we were well-funded. And they continue because they're concerned about their building. They want to improve their building. They want the buildings to stay affordable. They're worried that Newark's going to take all these large buildings and make them into condominiums. What is the future of low-income housing? We got people in Hyde Court right now that are fighting for their homes, really concerned about what's happening to, the proposals to knock down half their buildings. And these will have motivations, and because they do have a self-interested motivation, they're going to be involved, so these are probably the most important resources to people themselves.
Becky?
Yeah, another aspect, I think, of your question, and Ray's comment a bit ago about, the number of nonprofits and community organizations there are around, that, in tough times, it may be that some of them are really not going to be able to survive, or the only way they will survive is if they do merge or coalesce or form umbrella organizations, especially with very stable organizations like those represented here. One of the really good models that has done that is Community Agencies Corporation of New Jersey that did become an umbrella and has about, I think about 3 or 4 nonprofits of long-standing duration in our town, but were just too small and underfunded on their own. Now they've got, a centralized administration and some economies of scale and cost savings because they are now under one umbrella. They still have their own identity, but they share some of those costs. That probably will have to happen more going forward, and we'll have to look at some of those models as ways to survive so that the uniqueness of serving a community is still there, but there might be some economies of scale because of a coalition of organizations.
Yeah, a couple things was said earlier. One of the things that Ray said was that organizations are very different in this environment, that there seems to be a necessity to be a functioning organization, not a cluster of people just thrown together. At the same time, there seems to be a need for more and more connection and people coming together. How do you then reconcile the two of them? Are they mutually exclusive of each other? Can they work together? Is there too many organizations? Do we need less? Do we need different types of entities coming together?
I would say that in terms of organizational structures, I think we have a good number of organizations. I think you have to leave room for the up-and-coming organizations, but I think there are a number of well-established organizations that I think could provide the basis for what I term the service delivery model, which is the little city hall that essentially government has gotten out of the delivery of services, and they're asking us to do that. So I think that's the role that many of our organizations play. On the other hand, to the extent that you incorporate a community organizing model, I think the goal should be, in fact, to create the kind of citizen engagement that's being talked about at the city level, where people do get involved in a variety of things, whether it's a school management team or whether it's a block association, whether it's a parent association, whether it's dealing with the garden on the corner of the block. You can create nucleus of leadership and civic engagement that create a cadre of people who will respond and take issues and create coalitions, because organizing is a thing like this, you know. Mike's model of block association works if you have homeowners. But when you don't have homeowners, then you need a landlord. In Newark, your landlord may own that building. You know, and that's the extent of his landlordship. You know, he's not the slumlord. He's a slumlord, but he's not the slumlord. And so the kind of organizing that it takes to do that is very different. So I think what we have to do is create different kinds of forms of bringing people together to engage them in their particular interest at a given time. So it's sort of popping in and popping out to meet the pressures of, and to the extent that an organization can be the link and becomes the communication link or the facilitator. You know, if it's no more than just opening your doors and saying, you want to talk about that building, or you want to talk about that garbage, or you want to talk about that crime, or you want to talk about the school, you can use our facility. You can come there. We can help you organize here, even if it's just, you know, printing out the notices. That facilitation, I think, has to be a growing model. She left. The neighborhood, super neighborhoods. The city went about that, and I don't think they had one conversation with anybody here. And yet, when we raised the question, what is the super neighborhood and how does it fit in? Oh, you guys let us support that. You know, no provisions for, no modeling how it might work. Oh, you guys just support that. It was not even in our, you know, we didn't know they were doing it, so how could it be in our game plan? And I think there's a role for us in that kind of citizen engagement, but I think it has to be constructed with the organizations, not simply said, oh, well, they'll just fill that void.
You know, I think there's two very fundamental features of real community organizing, and that's independence and self-determination. You know, when Ray mentioned super neighborhood, for instance, it's a fascinating phenomenon to me because it was something that was basically imposed upon the city as a fait accompli. Come to NJIT, here's our rollout party, we're doing a great thing. Civic engagement has become one of these buzz phrases, which is very interesting, and I'm not against it at all. I'm involved with some super neighborhood groups, but if you talk about independence and self-determination, it's organized by City Hall, it's funded through City Hall, and I see it as a possibility of, and I told Corey's people this, I never even saw Sharp James try to do this. It's the creation of gatekeeper organizations through which you will have to go to get anything done. I don't think many of them are working very well. But, you know, even when I see a Newark Now, which does great stuff, and I've told Mo Butler this, it's essentially Corey Civic Association becoming the conduit for huge amounts of money to organizations in Newark. It really gives me pause. And I've had this conversation, but that's the kind of thing you have to keep your eyes on in terms of organizing and how it can be co-opted to become something else.
Okay.
So to touch a little bit on what you've been saying.
Oh, you have to identify.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Brooke Barrett. I'm a graduate student at Milan at the New School for Management and Urban Policy in New York. My kind of area of study particularly is movement building and urban education policy. So I guess this kind of ties a little bit into what Ms. Doggett was saying and then also what Rich was talking about. But this idea of kind of like self-determination, but also the ability of, I guess, community-based organizations that are receiving CDBG money funneled through City Hall. I mean, not be City Hall money, but it's funneled through them. And kind of protecting that money so you can do your work on the ground, but also kind of having that organizing component and keeping it, I guess, honest in a way. So I guess my really roundabout way of getting to this question is there a space for an organization like an Acorn or IAF or PICO in Newark that can kind of do that organizing that's not dependent on that community development block grant money, but is also just focused on organizing and having that?
If we were not doing organizing, I would say yes, but I think we do organizing within the nature of what the context that we have to work in. And two, for $30,000, the city would not stop me from doing something.
Yeah, CDBG fund community organizing.
Right.
No, it doesn't fund our
organizing or maybe pushing the wrong button.
It doesn't. CDBG and the city does not fund the organizations at the state in any significant way. That action of withdrawing those funds, I think, would stop us from doing the things that we have done. We have challenged the city, this administration and previous administrations, on things that really affect us. Their land use policies could have an impact on us. There are other things that have an impact on us, and we've reacted to those things, and I think we've been able to turn them around at times. We've won, we've lost. But I don't think that it's the CDBG dollars or the money in its entirety that comes out of City Hall that hits us is enough to influence at least the four organizations that I think are here.
Nancy?
Sometimes the organizations deliberately set up other groups. For example, in the fight about our park, we set up a park, and that was done deliberately to keep some black away from Ironbound Community Corporation. It didn't work exactly because the black hit anyway, and they even tried to take away the senior citizens programs and the daycare centers. And only because we got an article on the New York Times and bust a whole bunch of people to a freeholder meeting were we able to save everything. Try sometimes to set up smaller groups. The Ironbound Committee again. I was like to remove it so that it has a different name and some of the more, controversial parts of it where you are really challenging,
Newark Community Development.
There seems to be a number of tools that you can use to distance or connect yourself to an issue. But at the heart of it, what I'm hearing that the folks around on the table are saying is that if there is an issue that is detrimental to the community, organizations are still willing to risk pretty much everything to fight that issue, to stand against it.
I think too, Gerard, that the organization,
including their funding,
there's no dollar that's more valuable than the integrity of the organization.
Yeah.
And if funding of one sort or another is a condition for selling the soul of the organization, that's simply not going to happen.
Yeah, and that has remained true.
I think Rich mentioned that we all have neighborhood plans, and the neighborhood plans were developed with regular public input and through consensus. There were a series of neighborhood meetings, small meetings, larger meetings, and a lot of give and take that were absolutely necessary for the completion of those plans. That's a fresh example of citizen participation. All of those plans have been developed in the last 2 or 3 years.
There's an old community organizing axiom called, which says you have to deal with people where they are, not where you want them to be. And I think the organizations up here, this is a constant process of staying in touch with your community, however you define that. What's on their minds? What are the issues? I mean, you bring issues to them also, and then see how they will respond, but then they'll bring issues to you too. So those are specific things that I know these organizations all do on a constant level, and then the community planning has become a very key part of that.
I would say that all of our organizations also have a governance structure that encourages and brings in people, as I think was defined. We have residents, we have people who live and work here, people who have a stake in the Newark community or our community where we are working. So I think that's a balancing act that engages people and keeps us attuned, I think, to the community.
And all kinds of meetings, tons of meetings, and if someone else is having a meeting, we'll be there. If, let's say there's a meeting at the public school, have something you want to pass out, we go to a lot of meetings. Also, I will say that email has made a big difference in terms of getting out to people. We use that a lot more than we ever did. The newspaper is less effective these days than ever, but the email thing is good. A lot of communication, I think.
But we still engage, the organizers, and I work on the principle, if you're in the office, you're not doing your job. If you're in the street, you are. And, we do maintain a small stable of community organizers, and they should be in the street. Basically dealing with people, as Richard said, where they're at.
And we'll take two more.
I'm Tony Schumann, I teach architecture at NJIT. When Rich timed out before, you were just talking about some of the contradictions involved and the community becoming a land and in a visual development that had some problems. The question, the larger question is the distinction, if there is one, between community organizing and community development. And I wonder if you could touch on, in your own organizations, whether you've embraced development. I mean, the most obvious case would be housing. I'm not sure how you see school or daycare as part of development. But whether you try to straddle that line or stay more on organizing.
We see our organization in two contexts. One is prescriptive services. It's Meals on Wheels, home health care. It's preschool, where there's a definite need. It's targeted to the most vulnerable members of the community. The other is preventive, and that's community organizing and community development. They're really two sides of the same activity. And a whole neighborhood or a healthy neighborhood has decent housing, rental housing and for sale housing. It has decent schools. It has a good level of public safety. And these are all activities that community organizers stimulate by getting people to communicate and talk to each other about conditions in the community and how to change those conditions in a positive way. So I think they're highly...
Does Unified Vailsburg, for example, act as a housing developer of affordable housing?
Yes.
Yes.
I think, Tony, what you'd find is that those organizations that start out as organizers have gone to the development mode and becomes one of the tools that they use in terms of building their organization capacity. On the other hand, you have found housing development corporations that you'd call community development corporation who have gone to community development, which incorporates community organizing. And so I think there's this mesh of the two. It doesn't matter which end of the spectrum you enter. At some point, organizing is bringing people together. Linking those people and maintaining their interests requires a variety of activities. As I said before, you need a landlord you can beat up on, or you need to have some kind of constant renewal of contact, linkage to the community to justify, one, your existence, is also to justify the wherewithal to bring people together to take action when it needs to be taken.
And what happens when you have a landlord you beat up on?
The idea is not to be the landlord.
I think from a funding perspective, we see two types of organizations. We see community development corporations that come to us, and their interest is at the community at hand, and they have gotten into housing development, real estate development, because they're responding to needing the community. I think that's the entity that these folks represent. Tonight there isn't organizations, the other set of organizations we see, which is nonprofit housing developers and nonprofit real estate developers who are disconnected from the community. Their sole purpose, their reason for being in business is to do real estate deals. And I think that's what the two differences are.
Or you can take Acorn, who starts out as an organizer, who has moved into the development realm.
I mean, organizing is a means to an end. It should get us to the point where our community is developed in a way that's just, equitable, right. And that development could include tangible housing, workforce, healthcare. It could just go to the point of public policy, not just, but go to the point of, like an Acorn, public policy advocacy, which is not to the exclusion of these groups too. We all do public policy advocacy also. So it's again, it's not an end in itself. You organize to do something. So, sorry.
Last question?
Mr. Ocasio, you brought up...
You have to introduce...
Oh, sorry. Excuse me, Newark resident, proud Newark resident. Mr. Ocasio, you brought up before, and I think it was an honest and it was a real question, has the nature of some of these more formal institutions. And I think that people are getting together, still forming clusters in the Newark community. Many of them are young people. And they're starting clusters for reasons, I think, that many are organizations with those cluster groups because they didn't feel sincere opportunities for leadership in many of the organizations that currently. If I got all CDC board members in a room together, there's really no age diversity. I'm making sort of that assumption.
Right.
I'm making an assumption. I'm making a huge assumption here. But
What was the assumption?
assumption that if you brought all the board members for all Newark CDCs in one room, where's the age diversity? So the question around survival and sustaining our so the question around survival is generational gap. Yes. So I mean, my seasons folks are there. So the question around survival and sustaining our efforts, I think, is through intergenerational leadership. And I think sincere intergenerational leadership, not the token young person leader that's in a room that's not meant to talk that much. I mean, sincerely. So I guess my question is around what are organizations currently doing, and how are some CDCs engaged in a conversation? How can we be a part of that conversation around having sincere leadership, intergenerational leadership with community organizing and organizations?
Well, one, I would say that we have young people, not 18, but we have young people. I'll define young as under 30. So that's one. The other thing is, I would say to you, for the last 10 years, Becky, we've been part of something called Leadership Newark. And that has been a vehicle. I have some of my fellow colleagues here. We've been at the vanguard of creating a cadre of people who are not only interested in Newark, but receive some kind of preparation to be able to examine policy issues, organizational issues, in a variety of ways, so that, and have a network of people that they can engage with to take that kind of action. I use Leadership Newark as a recruitment, as a training facility for my own staff, but I also see a cadre of people who are going out there, some who I put on my board, by the way. I see a cadre of people who are going out into other nonprofit organizations, and these are definitely the under 30 crowd. There are some 40s and 50 people. We still sneak them in, because they still have ambitions. But there's a lot of young people who are working their way into that. And it's interesting enough, while some of them have gone the political route, most of them have gone through the nonprofit route, either engaging themselves in our organizations or organizations like ours, or starting their own. So I think it is happening. And by the way, everybody probably who's sitting up here, I think he has a little gray, started out very young at the bottom.
You gotta remember that. He had to kick the door down too. I'll just say from a funding perspective, one of the delights that we have had and missed to fund is Lincoln Park. And Lincoln Park is run by Wilson. And I think that's probably Bae and his staff.
Over 30.
He wasn't when he started.
No, not when he started. But there is room. Funders are listening. There is the need. But I think as Ray said, each of the folks when they came to the table too, and unfortunately you do have to stake your claim. But the funders are listening, and we are looking for more intergenerational activity with existing organizations, and we're also looking for the young organizations that are sprouting something very different to.
Gerard, I just want to make a comment before some of our college students leave. Thinking about nonprofits, that in your question raised in my mind. The nonprofit sector is an excellent sector to exercise leadership. Running a nonprofit is more challenging, more demanding. It's really like running a small business. And if you want to get into a field and be in charge of something and run something, running a nonprofit is an excellent opportunity to do it, and to have the flexibility and the ability to be creative in ways that you don't get if you're working in the public sector. The other thing is kind of what Gerard was saying with kicking in the door. If in community organizing, you can't ask permission. You got to go out there and take on the issue and hope that some of the old folks will support you. A lot of times they won't, because I can remember when I was young, a lot of them were, trying to hold us back. So it's kind of a phenomenon that occurs, but hopefully because we remember some of those days, that we will be allies and supporters and be behind you when you want to go out there and take on some of these issues of the day. all the best to you in doing it.
Nancy has one comment.
I also think that you should just get involved with some of the organizing going on. Give me your card, we'll get you on the list, and get involved with, for example, the fight to save your water system right now is hot all around the city. And, there are things that are happening right now. And also, anytime you guys meet, you want to talk over politics, community organizing, really tell us where and when, we'll come.
We'll bring our workers.
The other area that I think is wide open for the young generation, for the younger generation, is information technology. R&D information technology is something that each of these organizations need, and that I think this is a wonderful opportunity and entree for young people coming in to offer these organizations something that they don't have, but it's valuable to move on and continue connecting. Let me say, Becky, as she stands up and show me the title, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to meet you. This forum.
I want to thank Gerard for moderating and moving us along. And many thanks to my colleagues and old friends here on the panel. It was really a great time for us to be together. And one of the things as a disclaimer we really want to say is that there are many other community organizations here in Newark. I mean, that has been the fiber of Newark, why they're still in Newark and why there is something that could be revitalized. I think it's been because of the work of the community organizations throughout and the nonprofit community throughout the city of Newark that has just kept on going in spite of many, many obstacles. So we'd like to thank you all again for coming. And Warren is asking if you're new on our mailing list and we don't have your email address, if you could, do you have a paper there, Warren, for them to fill out? You can buy one. Somebody has to paper with your name and your emails on a slip of paper. Slip of paper or card or whatever you might have, and we'll be glad to add you to the list. Our next program is next month. We have another program. Our theme next month is what is the word?
It's the newly started Newark Laws and People. The students who have written dissertations and doing research on Newark.
So the new historian is sort of the young academia, so that might be something you all would also be interested in. And again, thank you all very much for coming. And we want to thank Rosie for videotaping, putting us into posterity here. And come back around for a few more minutes, and we're glad to talk to you one-on-one. Thank you again.
Latino organizers.
Good job, moderator.
Actually, George Farley, Newark Public Library. Somebody in your office called James Lewis.